The day the aliens declared humanity too weak was the day our skis stopped belonging to us. They arrived without warning, vast geometric vessels folding space like paper and settling into orbit with silent precision. Every satellite, every telescope, every eye on Earth turned upward as a single message translated itself into every human language at once. The voice was calm, emotionless, and absolute. It stated that humanity had been observed for millennia, catalogued, simulated, and finally judged. The verdict was simple: humans were biologically inefficient, socially unstable, and strategically irrelevant. There would be no invasion, no extermination, and no negotiation. Instead, there would be study. Panic spread faster than any plague in recorded history. Governments attempted unity and failed within hours. Markets collapsed, religions fractured, and militaries stood helpless beneath ships that ignored missiles as if they were dust. Then came the second message. The aliens called themselves the Concord of Quiet Suns, a collective of species that believed conquest was wasteful and annihilation was ignorant. They claimed weakness was not a sin, but a curiosity. Humanity was not to be destroyed, but understood. Extraction sites appeared across the globe, vast floating rings lowering beams of soft white light. Volunteers were requested, then calmly informed that refusal was irrelevant. Millions were taken in the first week, chosen not by rank or wealth, but by biological diversity. Farmers, soldiers, infants, elders, athletes, and the sick vanished into the light. The rest of humanity watched, powerless and furious. The Concord did not touch our cities or our weapons. They touched our bodies. Those taken were not chained or caged. They were placed in environments that felt almost kind. Warm light, breathable air, gravity tuned gently to human comfort. The aliens did not appear at first. Instead, machines like translucent insects drifted through the chambers, scanning, sampling, and recording. Blood was drawn without needles, tissue mapped without incision, thoughts measured without consent. Human biology fascinated the Concord. They had encountered strength in claws and fangs, endurance in silicon-based life, and intelligence in distributed minds. Humans had none of these advantages in pure form. Yet our bodies refused to fail as expected. Muscles adapted rapidly under stress, bones reinforced themselves when strained, and immune systems evolved responses in real time. The Concord noted something inefficient yet persistent. Humans healed not because they were well designed, but because they were stubborn. Pain tolerance varied wildly, yet even fragile bodies demonstrated extreme resilience when driven by emotion or belief. The study expanded. Humans were deprived of sleep, oxygen, gravity, and companionship in controlled cycles. Instead of collapsing uniformly, reactions diverged. Some shut down, some hallucinated, some grew violent, and some adapted. The Concord began to suspect that weakness was not a single trait, but a misleading average. Biology alone could not explain the inconsistency. So they moved deeper. Neural mapping revealed patterns the Concord had rarely seen. Human brains were chaotic, inefficient, and noisy. Thoughts overlapped, contradicted, and looped endlessly. Yet within that noise was something difficult to quantify. Humans could hold two opposing ideas and still act. They could fear death and run toward it. They could understand hopeless odds and choose resistance anyway. The Concord simulated human decision-making and found it unpredictable beyond acceptable margins. Emotion played a central role. Love, rage, guilt, hope, and grief altered physical limits. Subjects exposed to images of family showed measurable increases in strength and endurance. Subjects exposed to injustice demonstrated heightened pain tolerance. Some humans when told escape was impossible, attempted it repeatedly until their bodies failed. Others waited patiently for years, conserving energy for a single moment of action. The Concorde realized that human weakness was situational, not absolute. Our biology was designed not for perfection, but for survival under changing conditions. This revelation unsettled the collective. They had always valued optimization. Humans valued meaning. The Concorde decided to test human adaptability directly. A controlled environment was created, simulating a hostile alien world. Low oxygen, high radiation, unstable terrain, and constant threat stimuli. Human subjects were introduced with minimal resources. The expectation was rapid failure followed by data collection. Instead, the humans organized. Without instruction, they formed groups, assigned roles, shared knowledge, and created tools from scrap. They used broken machinery as shelter, radiation as a navigational guide, and fear as motivation. When one human died, the others changed behavior immediately, reducing further loss. The Concorde observed something unprecedented. Humans learned from death, not only individually, but collectively. Data spread through gesture, story, and imitation faster than the Concorde data networks could predict. Within weeks, the humans were no longer surviving, but stabilizing the environment. They altered it. The experiment escalated, predators were introduced, conditions worsened, and resources removed. Human response intensified. They set traps, formed defenses, and sacrificed individuals willingly for group survival. The Concorde recorded a new classification error. Humans were not weak organisms. They were crisis specialists. The final session of the Concorde was unlike any before. They reviewed centuries of doctrine in the shadow of a species they had dismissed. Human biology was flawed, yes, but those flaws created adaptability. Pain taught caution, fear taught preparation, and mortality taught urgency. Humans did not seek equilibrium. They sought continuation. The Concorde issued a new declaration. Humanity was to be released, not as equals, not as subjects, but as anomalies worthy of distance and respect. Before departure, they transmitted all collected data back to Earth. Medical advancements, genetic insights, and warnings. One warning stood above all others. If humanity ever achieved technological parity, the galaxy should prepare. Because a species that evolved under constant pressure does not seek dominance. It seeks survival at any cost. The ships departed, the skis cleared, and the abducted returned, changed but alive. Humanity was left alone with the knowledge that the universe had blinked first. And somewhere among the stars, the Concorde quietly redefined the meaning of weak. The Concorde believed departure would end the anomaly. They were wrong. Long after the last quiet sun vessel folded space and vanished, the data they carried continued to evolve. Within the Concorde's vast lattice of shared cognition, human biology refused to remain static. The models destabilized, projections diverged, and predictive certainty eroded. Every attempt to compress humanity into equations resulted in cascading probability failures. The Concorde had catalogued extinction events, cultural collapses, and stellar deaths with near-perfect accuracy. Human futures resisted convergence. 1 billion simulations produced 1 billion outcomes, none dominant, none dismissible. This unsettled the collective more than open hostility ever could. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity struggled to absorb the aftermath. The returned abductees carried memories that fractured language. No single human could explain what had been learned, only fragments emerged. Doctors noticed accelerated healing in some, neurological changes in others, and heightened stress responses across the population. The knowledge transmitted by the Concorde reshaped medicine overnight. Diseases once terminal became manageable, injuries once permanent became temporary. But alongside progress came a quiet shift in perception. Humanity had been measured, found wanting, and then feared. That knowledge did not inspire peace. It inspired vigilance. Children born after the Concorde's departure demonstrated subtle biological drift. Immune systems responded faster, neural plasticity extended longer into adulthood, and stress tolerance increased measurably. Not through genetic engineering, but through selection pressure. The human species had changed simply by being observed. The Concorde had not altered humanity directly. They had forced humanity to see itself. Across the stars, the Concorde convened again. This time the tone was cautious. Humanity was no longer classified as a primitive study subject. They were designated a reactive species, a rare classification reserved for organisms that evolve behaviorally faster than environmental pressure predicts. Only 3 such species had ever been recorded. 2 had collapsed under internal conflict. 1 had consumed its own star system in a failed attempt to outrun entropy. Humanity did not fit those patterns cleanly. They fractured constantly, yet reunited under threat. They competed relentlessly, yet shared innovations with reckless generosity. They weaponized everything, including compassion. The Concorde reviewed footage again, slowing it to frames. A human shielding another with their body. A human laughing in the face of imminent death. A human continuing to speak encouragement while dying. These behaviors did not increase survival probability in isolation. Yet they elevated group survival dramatically. The Concorde realized a core error in their philosophy. They optimized for individual efficiency. Humans optimized for collective persistence. The ripple effects extended beyond the Concorde. Other civilizations detected the anomaly in quiet sun data traffic. Whispers spread through trade networks and observation arrays. A weak species that adapted faster than controlled environments. A biological system that improved under trauma. A civilization that learned from extinction-level threats as if they were lessons. Some species dismissed the reports as Concorde bias. Others quietly reoriented long-range sensors towards Sol. Humanity noticed the attention. New signals were detected at the edge of the heliosphere, faint and cautious. Probes observing rather than approaching. Human scientists recognized the pattern immediately. We were no longer alone in being watched. We were an example. Global cooperation did not arrive cleanly. Old rivalries persisted, wars did not vanish, inequality did not dissolve. But something fundamental shifted. Extinction was no longer abstract. Humanity had looked into a galactic mirror and seen how close it had come to irrelevance. Space programs unified under shared urgency. Not to conquer, but to endure. The Concorde debated intervention endlessly. Some argued that humanity should be guided, constrained, or limited before it became dangerous. Others countered that interference would only accelerate unpredictable evolution. Humanity responded to pressure by changing faster, not slower. In the end, the Concorde chose distance. But distance did not mean ignorance. Decades passed in human time. Centuries passed for the Concorde. Humanity spread cautiously beyond its cradle. Not in vast armadas, but in fragile habitats. Stations failed, colonies collapsed, crews died. Each failure refined the next attempt. Humanity did not fear loss. It documented it. The Concorde observed a new pattern emerging. Human technology did not follow clean optimization curves. It leaped, stalled, regressed, and then surged again. Breakthroughs often followed disasters. The Concorde realized humanity did not innovate to avoid suffering. They innovated to survive it. Then came the signal. A human probe crossed a boundary the Concorde had believed unreachable without quiet sun technology. It was inefficient, crude, and barely held together. But it arrived. The probe carried no weapons, only data, art, and a simple message translated into mathematical constants. We are here. We are still learning. The Concorde did not respond immediately. For the first time in their history, they hesitated. Contact with humanity no longer carried asymmetrical certainty. The humans had not reached parity, but they were approaching unpredictability thresholds. Within the Concorde, a new doctrine began forming quietly. Observation without judgment. Containment without control. Preparation without provocation. Humanity was no longer a subject. They were a variable. Back on Earth, humanity debated the silence. Some demanded answers, others demanded caution. But beneath the arguments lay a shared understanding. The universe was not kind. It was conditional. Human biology continued to adapt. Long-term exposure to microgravity altered musculoskeletal development. Radiation resistance improved through selection and technology. Psychological resilience became a taught discipline rather than a byproduct of trauma. Humans were not becoming stronger in the way the Concorde understood strength. They were becoming harder to erase. The Concorde's final projection extended 10,000 years forward. In most scenarios, humanity survived. In many, it expanded. In a few, it collapsed catastrophically. But in none did it vanish quietly. Humanity always left echoes. Ruins, signals, artifacts, warnings. Even in extinction, humanity altered the civilizations that followed. That realization marked the end of certainty. The Concorde archived humanity not as a solved problem, but as a standing reminder. Weakness measured in isolation means nothing. Adaptation measured under pressure defines survival. Somewhere beyond human perception, a quiet sun observer recorded one final annotation. Humanity does not endure because it is strong. Humanity endures because it refuses to accept endings. And across the stars, civilizations adjusted their trajectories just slightly. Not away from humanity, but around it. Because the species once declared too weak had proven something far more dangerous. It could change faster than the universe expected.